Hi everyone, I am here through the portal to share my first encounter with the portal in the interdimensional existence, and with that also my story, my history within heaven at that stage. So this is quite an interesting process to walk within these interviews and coming through the portal, in all of us that walked a process with the portal, in giving a entire perspective of the situation in heaven at the stage when the portal opened, and us individual beings' experiences of ourselves in heaven at that stage, and within that also where heaven and all beings now are within their process within existence, and hearing it from individual perspectives. And this interview is one of those of me. And my story starts with when the portal opened. That moment, just a few moments before that, was when I died. And I, at that stage in my earth human physical body, was 7 years old, and I crossed over into the interdimensional existence in heaven, and my death was quite comfortable, meaning I died in my sleep, and my death was comfortable, but my life in my human physical body was physically horrendous, as I died from leukemia. And my experience within this physical world was not what any child would expect it to be in any way. As even while I was living in this world, one has an understanding that this is not how life is supposed to be. And with watching television while spending most of my time in hospital, and even just seeing most of the kids there, and even healthy kids that come visit their siblings, one started question in terms of, but why do I have to be so sick? And why do we then come into this world to be sick? And I'd always simply hear from my parents and the nurses and doctors that we're all special, and God has a greater plan for us, and heaven is waiting for you, and where you'll go when you die is be with the angels and be in God's hands, and He will welcome you in His arms. And I had all these stories of heaven. My parents were quite upfront with me, and I mean, as a child, 7 years old, it doesn't take much to know that you're going to die. And so I lived in a lot of fear of death. I mean, yes, I heard these great stories about heaven and the angels and God and how great it's going to be and how happy I will be. But still, there was this part within me that did not want to die, and which, after I died, in having a look at my whole earth experience, in as we as heaven was walking the process of reviewing our earth lives and life experiences, and I'll get later to how existence walked our process out of our heaven or mind and into reality of what existence was really about, and how we were in fact enslaved to and within energy, and we completely missed what was really in fact going on in existence and earth and human beings. So during that review stage, it's quite interesting how we still have that experience within ourselves that no matter what the suffering we go through, we still don't want to die. And it's like holding on to something that is undefined, that is, there's no words for it, but it's like you have to hold on. And because, I mean, if that point exists, that there's heaven and this magnificent great place that you'll go to with this heavenly Father, I mean, there should be joy, there should be happiness, there should be comfort, there should be a release of knowing I'm going to be okay. But still, every time they spoke about God and heaven, I went into absolute fear. Like, inside myself, kind of going, I don't want to go there, I want to stay here. And obviously only much later in my process within heaven that I walked, I realized that that reaction within my physical, even as a child, was the beingness knowing and realization that heaven, where I was going, was not where I was supposed to be, or not what it is being made out to be, meaning there's something wrong. I mean, that's what my physical, that was what I was showing myself, within myself, with my immediate reaction of fear and anxiety. And I remember every time that they'd speak about heaven or God and the angels, I would cringe and just hold myself, like kind of going, don't take me. And so most of my physical life experience was in much pain and agony and being in this physical world and waiting to go to this heavenly existence or experience, which is like quite interesting in terms of why then did I not just go to heaven or God? Why be here in this physical pain and suffering as a child? It serves no purpose. It has no point to my life, to any being's life in my world and reality, and has no effect within existence as a whole in any way whatsoever if children suffer in this way. Obviously, I did not, as I crossed over when I died, realize the conditional state of existence as a whole. I mean, all of this that I'm sharing with you now is realizations that came through as we were walking our process in existence. But the moment I did cross over when I died, that experience, that feeling within me of there's something wrong still remained, and it was quite intense. And the moment I crossed over, there was this being that was waiting for me when I died, and my death was quite interesting in that, especially for children during that time, we were a lot more aware than most beings that crossed over or died, because our minds was not so integrated or amalgamated with our beingness, so most of our beingness rather came through as we died and released ourselves from the physical than how we were entrapped in the mind and in the soul construct. And when I crossed over, there was this being waiting, and I immediately knew, okay, this is not an angel, because it didn't have wings, and it wasn't this radiant light, and it didn't have its halo and the white dressing and everything that I would have expected to find. And in a way, when I died, I also didn't expect necessarily to find heaven, to find God, to be with angels. It's like you just know it's not real. Within me, it was a story. Even while I was still in my body and I was listening, I could look at it in myself and in my mind and look at what's being said to me, and still it remained just a story. It's like I couldn't physically experience it or place it into a reality context. And that also fed that initial experience inside myself of my parents are lying, or what they're telling me is a lie. And you can also just see it as a child in the way that parents and adults use their voice and their eyes and the way they say things. I mean, children are very perceptive in being able to pick up physical behavior, especially when they're trying to make you believe something. And that also I could detect and see. And it's like simply the way they were speaking about heaven and God and the angels and things like that was like wanting to make me believe and say, yes, I believe, and I believe in you and that I'm going to be okay. But my physical experience was saying something completely different. And that also creates quite a strain on the relationship between adults and children, because I became more and more afraid in myself, and I felt more and more alone and more isolated, and fear of death became quite a experience for me, because I physically knew that I was busy dying, and what's being said to me feels like lies. What's really going on? What is really going to happen? And so when I crossed over, I met my fear in that I was not met by angels, I couldn't see God and heaven. It was just white, and there was this being waiting for me, and this being had this white straight hair, short, and he had on like a white, slightly brownish tintish robe, and he was standing with his hands like in a prayered position. So I considered that, okay, that position, he might be a disciple of God or the angels or heaven that's come to fetch me. But when I look back into my body, into my physical, after I crossed over and died, and I was like hovering slightly above my body, and the being was waiting for me there. When I look back, I could see like these blue threads that was like in my body, and it was coming up through all my organs and in my chest and in my head, and there was like this open black space within these blue threads. And I asked this guy that was waiting for me, did I come from there? And he said, yes, that is your mind vessel that facilitates your body vessel to be able to live in this physical reality. So your mind helps you function in this physical reality. And I asked him, but what was wrong with me? Why did I do something wrong in that I died? And then I had to go through all that pain and be so sick for so long and put my parents through such a life. And he said, yes, it's part of God's plan. It's part of your lesson within your life. And I looked at him and I said to him, but I didn't learn any lessons. I can't remember that I learned any lessons. And he said, no, follow me. We're going to go to a place where you're going to have a look at your life so that you can see what lessons that you learned as we walk you through the life that you had. And within me in that moment, immediately, I walked through my life, my memories and things like that. And I mean, I had a relatively normal childhood for the first few months and years, but then just got sick and spent it in the hospital and died. There was no lesson. My only question was, why did I have to suffer and go through so much pain? There is no lesson. And then he insisted that the only view that I'm currently taking into consideration is just my own, and I'm not seeing everything. I'm not seeing the bigger picture, and he has to show me to go and see the bigger picture. And as I was walking with him, and we were like moving up more and more up, like through this white substance, and the more we moved farther away from my body, the more and more enveloped by whiteness we became. And I was moving farther and farther away from my body, and eventually the picture, the reality, the physical and everything that I was seeing started becoming less and less and less, and disappeared until it was just the two of us, and you could just see whiteness into existence, into eternity. And as we were moving, I had this experience of, okay, this is not where I'm supposed to be. Like, I'm again going into following someone, but myself within me is saying something else. And I had to trust this within me, because for one thing, what's happening with me in death is completely the opposite to what I've been told on earth. So I have to find out what's really going on. And so I told him that I'm not going with him. And I turned around and went back to my body very fast. And he came like moving after me. I wouldn't say like running, because there wasn't particularly any physical running happening. He was just moving fast with me, and I was moving like a flash towards my physical. And I then integrated back into my physical to find out what was really going on with me. What is my body? What was this thing that was inside me? Who was I while I was here? Because I like to find out what really happened, and the only way to find out what really happened is at the source, the origin, which is my physical. And going away is again taking me to somewhere far, far away from here, and I'd first like to find out here. I mean, I've got all the time in existence, and there's been no lightning bolts or I haven't heard any loud voices saying, hey, you, come here, or hey, where are you going? What are you doing? Or lots of beings or angels or things arriving. So why not investigate? And so I went back into my body and integrated. And as I integrated into the physical, I could see my human physical body, and I could see all these threads and systems and things moving inside my body that was all these various different colors, and that was expressing in various different ways. It's like the system was still like moving inside the body. It was definitely not part of the body, because the physical, it obviously stopped breathing and everything was shut down, and I could feel as I was in my physical body everything like slightly stiffening, as literally everything stops. The blood stops moving. There's no breathing. There's no movement within the molecular cellular structures at all. And it's like fascinating, because it felt like in that moment as I was in my body, like everything shutting down very slowly. And it's like, imagine you're floating on a stream, and as you're floating on that stream, you're floating down into a dam, and in that dam everything starts slowing down, your floating stops, and your flowing stops, and you just stop, and you just float there in that one position. That's how it started feeling like dying with the body, meaning the body stopping. That was quite a significant moment in experiencing that in its totality with the physical. And while that was happening at the same time, these system threads of all these different colors were like moving and disconnecting in all sorts of directions. And I was stable in the body and with the body, while the system was like going insane in the physical. It was like when something physical is dying, and all its nerves starts disconnecting, and it's like trying to still fight for the last bit of life. That's like how the system was like going inside the physical. And the system was literally in my head region, down in my chest, in my spine, center of my body, down my legs, threaded like into the total human physical body. And obviously in that moment I didn't realize what this is, but it was quite scary, because it wasn't natural. And while I was in this physical body, I could see the physical human bodies of other human beings, and then I started seeing eyes inside the physical bodies of other beings that were inside the bodies of other human beings. I was like looking in, because there were these eyes, like beings' eyes. I first saw it in one of the other human beings' like shoulders. There was this being like coming out of the body, like looking at me. And then in another being I saw eyes in the stomach area, and another being in the head area, and all of a sudden there's these eyes, and I was like, whoa, who is this? What is this? Who's all these beings? And then it was more children. It was children that was within the physical bodies of human beings. And it was just children, meaning there was no other beings of light or white robes or white substance or anything. It was actual kids. And I was like, hey, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And so they came to me within my physical body, and they basically showed me existence and the process of existence, and what was busy happening, what was going on, and why the children was within the physical and were within a physical dimension within the human physical body. And basically what opened up within existence as a whole was the total understanding of what was busy happening in the process of existence, what was the situation with heaven, how beings were enslaved within all the heavens, the separation of heaven from earth, what's going on earth, the mind, the soul, reincarnation. I mean, we could see what was really happening within existence as a whole. And that us children was at the moment protected from that enslavement within existence as a whole because of our awareness in not being so integrated into the mind and into the physical. We were always seen as a threat to heaven and to the gods that was controlling existence, and therefore we would be targeted more when dying, and they were supposed to, when I died, assist and support me or catch me in bringing me with them to be here in the physical, to not go into heaven. But I was a bit too fast. It happened too suddenly and they couldn't get me. But obviously within my very beingness, within the who I am, I trusted me. And this is something that us children had within ourselves, because we were so close with ourselves and not so separated into a mind beingness as most beings within existence. And we looked at, okay, what is the current context of why us children are protected? And they showed me and explained to me that within the existential process of everything, we're playing a part, and our moment will come when we will stand up and step forth, and that existence as a whole is currently within a process. And so the perspective that we have, and that we've always had for a while within existence, was the understanding of what's really going on within existence as a whole. And that existentially, we have essentially throughout time been within a process. And that process is where us ourselves have created ourselves, and together, both heaven and earth, into a physical existence where we now have come to become and physically live, create and manifest and design ourselves into and as the truth of who we are as individuals and as an existence as a whole. Because throughout time we have never been able to exist within an actual togetherness, in creating together as an existence as a whole, and that's everything and everyone. We have only always fought, and within that fighting as competition, try to gain power, control, have more than superiority. And so we have essentially throughout time created the ultimate truth of who we are, and that's what each being now is and face. Each one faced the truth of who we've always been, and we are facing it at the moment to such an extent where we cannot run away from it. Meaning, if you are physically living the truth of you in your mind, in your physical, in your expression, in your beingness, you cannot run away from it but face it. And human beings in this world will face it within themselves in their physical experience. All that you're facing, becoming and seeing is the truth of you. The same happens within heaven, or within the interdimensional physical existence, as those that are dying. We're facing the truth of ourselves. all will equally as one face and come to face the truth of themselves, so that within that we can stop, change and transform ourselves from our current truth that has always been our truth within and throughout existence, that's created this existence of consequence and separation as it is, so we can realign ourselves and together into creating an existence of equality and oneness, what is best for all. I mean, everything that each one individually is experiencing is either an outflow of an existential process or a direct self-creation, in where one will start realizing how within the truth of what we're living as ourselves at the moment, as the mind, in our physical bodies, in our separation and interest and competition and conflict and fighting, we are creating our own consequence and the consequence of this existence. And it'll accumulate and perpetuate to such an extent until we stop. I mean, how else are we going to assist and support ourselves to stop ourselves, but become the evil that we have always been, that we cannot run away from, that we cannot hide, that we cannot ignore, because we are it. So that then showed the existential process of what was busy happening and how we were all manifesting ourselves into our own consequence of ourselves as ourselves, so that we can face it, stop it and change it, because throughout time we've been trying to hide, ignore, run away, not see, blame for what was happening in existence, when all the while we as individuals and together have always been responsible. And so everything within existence is happening in an individual and also at an existential context. So here, just to give a perspective of what's really happening within process and within existence. And I mean, the sooner one starts to realize that what you're experiencing in yourself, in your own world and the world as the whole, you're creating, in fact, the sooner you'll stop, change and transform yourself, get others to stop, change and transform themselves, so that we can sort out this existence. We created this in the first place. Obviously we can change it. And as children, we're particularly protected from a certain period of time within the process of existence, that we will bring in a bit later within the history of the Interdimensional Portal interviews, and why it is particularly, specifically, and when it was that as children was protected from being enslaved into and as heaven, and how that particularly assisted and supported with the process that heaven then eventually walked in, walking out of their energetic enslavement of heaven and the white light, and back into realizing the reality of everything, of what was really going on, which as children assisted and supported with, because we were essentially already here within the physical, within what was really going on in existence, and we played that part of assisting and supporting the lost beings in heaven to realize what was going on in existence, to start the process of taking responsibility for ourselves as our creation, as this physical existence. So as children were here in the physical, and I looked at what was really going on, and I sighed with relief, because this was in a way a lot better than going to God and heaven and seeing angels and stuff like that. Because I mean, you could like see everything, and it was quite exhilarating. And then while I was in my physical body, I was still lying there and I was looking up, and I could obviously still see the white light and see beings and guides and things that were moving around. They couldn't see us though, because the guides were in their white light cocoon, protected from the physical actual reality. I mean, we could also sometimes see the demons, and the demons were obviously moving around within and between the humans. And the guides feared the demons, so they always ensured that they had their white light cocoons when they came down to be with their human counterparts. And so therefore they couldn't see the actual real physical reality of what was really going on. And so I was lying and I was looking up, and I saw that other guy that was initially there when I died, and his eyes went like all big, like he had a shock, and he was like looking around, and then all of a sudden he started moving, and then when he moved I saw another being move, and then another, and then there was like demons going past, and all of them were moving into one particular direction. And while I was also in the physical, there was like this wave that moved through the physical, and I asked the kids, did they experience it as well? And they were like, yeah. But it wasn't like a wave, it was like what? It's more like a ripple effect, if you will, like a ripple effect. And I was like, did you guys ever experience this, or what's going on? And I could see in their eyes, and they're like, no, something's happening here. Because it wasn't like just an energetic or an experiential ripple effect. It wasn't of energy. It was a physical sound substance movement. Like we for a moment went into a physical substantial experience of infinity that was like a depth that you could touch, and it was like moving through us within the physicals. And obviously something has happened or is happening both up there and down here. So what's going on? So I thought I'd go take a look, and I did, and I moved into and towards the direction of where everyone else was moving, and there was this physical human body shape. I'd moved for quite a while, and there was like lots of beings moving in that direction, mostly demons. It was quite fascinating seeing demons, so many of them. I think I passed like 5 or 7 at the same time, and I mean, demons were quite interesting beings within the demon dimension. I mean, when the kids were explaining to me existence, they were showing me the demons and all of that, but now physically being with them in the dimension where we were moving together towards a particular point that I didn't know yet what it was, I was like kind of looking up and quite in awe at their hugeness. I mean, they were like massive. In my beingness expression, me looking up to them, so they're quite big, and they were like this dark, big, hulky substances, and they had all these like energies moving inside them, and these motions, and it looked like sometimes like hands and arms stretching out like they were hell walking on and moving within the demon dimension. You hear screaming and yelling, and that was simply their demonic expression and how they were presenting themselves, obviously, but it was still quite interesting. I was quite fascinated by it. But anyway, that was the one massive demon that I thought was interesting. It looked like he had hell inside him, literally yelling and screaming and hands going and flames and burning and agony and stuff. And so we moved while I was like kind of checking out the demons, and there in the distance I saw something black. Now the only darkness that I've seen equal to that was within the actual physical. And I remember that when I died and I moved into the white substance, that everything was white, meaning there was no blackness, darkness, no physical. The more and more you moved away, the more and more light it became. But here was this physical substance equal to the physical substance that I had been within and as, but not completely the same, meaning the physical substance that I was in within my body and with the other kids was still a dark, solid substance. That substance that I was seeing in front of me as I was moving closer and closer was like pristine, in that it looked like a picture that was there. And initially I thought, hey, maybe it is just a picture, I don't know. But as I was moving closer, I could see eternity in a physical form. And you just know it's real because you feel it. I mean, as I was moving closer, it was like it was pulling me towards it. Like, I just wanted to go in there and be with that. Like, it was something that I'd been looking for my entire existence. And as I was seeing it and I was looking into eternity, I took this breath and I sighed, and it was this relief that came over me. And within me, I spoke, "You are here." Like it was something that we've all been waiting for in a way. But not waiting for, more like always wondered if there was something here within existence more than what was really going on within existence. And when I saw that, it was like I knew that in a way everything will be okay. Meaning that yes, in terms of what's going on in existence seems really impossible, and what is here at this moment is impossible. Meaning, if we continue as we are and always have been, this is all that there will ever be, and we will simply create ourselves into nothingness. And this point, this manifestation, this physical that I was seeing, was knowing that, okay, we're here, and this is something that is going to change. Meaning not necessarily change everything, obviously, in a moment or in an instant. I mean, if you're in the interdimensional physical existence, you know the unlikelihood of everything changing miraculously, especially if you understand the context of everything and everyone's processes. But it's like seeing that was a relief, was okay, you're here. There is that point of there being something more. And so I moved closer and closer, and then I saw the physical as the portal, and then I saw Bernard, and Bernard was also equal to and one with seen by us kids in the equal and one physical substance that we were in the human physical bodies of human beings in this existence. And I thus recognized his substance as being here within the physical of this physical existence. And I looked at this and I was like, hey, but you're here in the physical bodies of everything in this physical manifested existence. It's like, is this you? Meaning, like, is this you that is here with us? And that question we'll answer later in the portal interviews to come, and what exactly that moment of recognition was. And that was again like, hey, I know you. And so there was also an interesting communication with us children, with the substance that was here within this physical existence within which we were protected, if you will. So again, we'll continue with that a bit later, because that's a lot more of an existential perspective that can only come later after some more history is given. But it's focused on the portal, and in the portal we could see eternity, meaning you could see the physical form, and there was within it, in the center, there was like this substance moving. So, like, for example, I explained in the beginning where I could see where I came out of my body, where that system was. But in this body, that system wasn't there, but there was this placement within the center of the physical. And this placement was like moving, and then within and through it, you could see and be with eternity. I mean, it's quite interesting seeing and being within eternity as an experience, as a recognition. I mean, it's something that's very difficult to put into words, but like, just imagine you being in an absolute self and physical silence, yet you're here with everything in the closest form of intimacy, the closest depth of experience of and with everything and everyone, and holding everything and everyone here with you in the deepest form of recognition would be that experience of infinity, eternity that was here. And there were, obviously, when I had arrived there were quite a few beings there already, 17, 21, as they were coming closer, mostly demons. There were some guides standing a bit farther away in their protected little white light bubbles, kind of in their prayer hands, watching what's going on. And there were some other random beings around that was coming from the dimensional planes that was curious. And it's quite fascinating, this moment, because already then, for the first time, there were various beings coming together in this one point that never usually ever happens. Like, for a moment, everything was forgotten and we were all just gathering here within this one point. And so that placement that was within the physical body, that was like coming out of eternity and manifested within the physical, was the point where one could like merge with and then fall into the physical. And it was quite fascinating in terms of the experience, because you'd like go into that placement that was within the chest area, that was the substance moving, and the movement of the substance was like equal to the movement of the substance of your very beingness. And it's like you being equal to and one with that substance within the placement, then integrate you into the substance that is the physical, the substance of the physical, which is equal to and one with the substance of your beingness. Consider that. And therefore it's like you're merging with yourself within the physical. It's like you merging with you, and here you're in this girl's human physical body, and you're here and you're speaking and communicating. I didn't communicate though. I just went in and merged with me as the substance, as the physical, and I was here, and it was equal to and one with the realization that here, this physical, in the substance of what it really is the key, the answer to our equality and oneness, to ourselves, to the return to ourselves, if you will. And here within the physical, you're home. I mean, when I merged with that placement into the body in a breath, it was like, I'm here. And that here-ness is like so absolute in terms of not being able to deny that this is where and how we've always supposed to have been. I mean, main question is like, where are we? You know, in terms of everything and everyone within existence. I mean, we are here, but we're not. We are separated into the mind and systems and missing existence. The absoluteness and totality of ourselves that is right here in and as and with this physical body. We just need to bring ourselves back home. And back home is in the physical. Alright, so that's my process, my story, and a little bit of interesting parts that you can look forward to as we continue talking about what's going on within process and existence, and the opening of the portal. And more as many more beings come through, we'll give some perspectives, and then we'll go deeper into heaven and how the news traveled. And I bet it would be interesting if and when Anu comes and gives his sharing of when the portal opened, and some of the demons as well. I mean, they've got some interesting stories about what was really going on in existence. And it's important to consider everything, because, I mean, this is real beings coming through and speaking with you, not some beliefs of stories apparently written 2,000 years ago. So, take this into consideration. You can simply look at your life and realize that this is not how life is supposed to be, not for self, and definitely not for all. Thank you very much. And obviously only much later in my process within heaven that I walked, I realized that that reaction within my physical, even as a child, was the beingness knowing and realization that heaven, where I was going, was not where I was supposed to be, or not what it is being made out to be, meaning there's something wrong. I mean, that's what my physical, that was what I was showing myself, within myself, with my immediate reaction of fear and anxiety. And I remember every time that they'd speak about heaven or God and the angels, I would cringe and just hold myself, like kind of going, don't take me. And so most of my physical life experience was in much pain and agony, and being in this physical world and waiting to go to this heavenly existence or experience, which is like quite interesting in terms of why then did I not just go to heaven or God? Why be here in this physical pain and suffering as a child? It serves no purpose. It has Hi everyone, I am here through the portal to share my first encounter with the portal in the interdimensional existence, and with that also my story, my history within heaven at that stage. So this is quite an interesting process to walk within these interviews and coming through the portal, in all of us that walked a process with the portal, in giving a entire perspective of the situation in heaven at the stage when the portal opened, and us individual beings' experiences of ourselves in heaven at that stage, and within that also where heaven and all beings now are within their process within existence, and hearing it from individual perspectives. And this interview is one of those of me, and my reviewing our Earth lives and life experiences, and I'll get later to how existence walked our process out of our heaven or mind and into reality of what existence was really about, and how we were in fact enslaved to and within energy, and we completely missed what was really in fact going on in existence and Earth and human beings. So during that review stage, it's quite interesting how we still have that experience within ourselves that no matter what the suffering we go through, we still don't want to die. And it's like holding on to something that is undefined, that is, there's no words for it, but it's like you have to hold on. And because I mean, if that point exists, that there's heaven and this magnificent great place that you'll go to with this heavenly Father, I mean, there should be joy, there should be happiness, there should be comfort, there should be a release of knowing I'm going to be okay. But still, every time they spoke about God and heaven, I went into absolute fear, like inside myself kind of going, I don't want to go there, I want to stay here. And in terms of, but why do I have to be so sick, and why do we then come into this world to be sick? And I'd always simply hear from my parents and the nurses and doctors that we're all special and God has a greater plan for us, and heaven is waiting for you, and where you'll go when you die is be with the angels and be in God's hands, and He will welcome you in His arms. And I had all these stories of heaven. My parents were quite upfront with me, and I mean, as a child, 7 years old, it doesn't take much to know that you're going to die. And so I lived in a lot of fear of death. I mean, yes, I heard these great stories about heaven and the angels and God and how great it's going to be and how happy I will be. But still there was this part within me that did not want to die, and which after I died, in having a look at my whole earth experience, in as we as heaven was walking the process of, the story starts with when the portal opened, that moment, just a few moments before that was when I died. And I, at that stage in my earth human physical body, was 7 years old, and I crossed over into the interdimensional existence in heaven, and my death was quite comfortable, meaning I died in my sleep, and my death was comfortable, but my life in my human physical body was physically horrendous, as I died from leukemia, and my experience within this physical world was not what any child would expect it to be in any way. As even while I was living in this world, one has an understanding that this is not how life is supposed to be. And with watching television while spending most of my time in hospital, and even just seeing most of the kids there, and even healthy kids that come visit their siblings, one started questioning